Bum, bum, bum.
I don't know.
Doogie-doo.
My phone didn't
Oh.
charge last night either, which was kind of annoying.
Did you lose power?
I like wireless chargers. No, I don't think so. I like wireless
No?
chargers, but sometimes it gets annoying, like if you just don't hit it right or something, you know?
Yeah, or if you bump it.
Yeah, which I think because Sam slept with us last night, maybe I bumped it or something. I have a wireless charger over here. It's right here.
I have one right here if you need it.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I have one built into this desk. I don't know if it's strong enough. Oh, now I'm getting emails left and right.
Now that you're powered up.
No,
Or just now?
just now. What is this? My desk is such a mess too.
My son, Steven, asked how Dylan did bowling.
There it is.
And they did okay.
They did awesome. Dylan did an amazing job.
Yeah, it came up a little short in the second round, just where we got knocked out last year too. The team we were playing against they just bowled lights out, man. Sometimes you come up on a group of kids that find a groove, and but they bowled really well. I was proud of them.
But Dylan himself
Proud of him.
did really well. I think he won every one of his matches, right?
He did.
His matchups.
He did.
He was captain consistency yesterday.
He got an offer to go bowl at Oklahoma Christian for a little scholarship money, so that's kind of cool.
And it's cool.
I say kind of cool. That's really cool.
Team.
I didn't either until we went up to take Jody last year, and they had a T-shirt in the bookstore that said Oklahoma Christian Bowling. I was like, what? Mm-hmm. Bowling's kind of the up and coming thing.
I knew that they used to do bowling for intramurals.
Right.
And that was one way that we would always sneak in extra points because we had a couple really good bowlers. And then they took it away.
No.
And
so
now,
appreciate you asking, Steve. They got singles in a couple weeks. I'll have the singles competition. So.
Oh yeah, in Shreveport?
No, it's here in Baton Rouge.
I don't know if I can make the 6-hour drive for that one. I'm thinking about you this morning, Steve, drinking out of my Portland mug.
Hey, Steve, I'm thinking about you too because I heard the good news about your wife. You know, doing really well, walking out of the rehab center. You know, praise God for that, and pray that recovery continues to move along. So that was really, really exciting when Aaron told me that yesterday. So, very cool.
I was really excited when my wife told me that too.
I feel like there's a story there, maybe for another day. Or another avenue.
Till we're all growing a beard, a man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for beer.
Well, hey, good morning, everybody. This is Behind the Beards. And on Behind the Beards, we pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and try to reveal the things that go on in the hearts and minds of your church and ministry leaders. I'm Joshua Fowler, a preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And my brother on the other side of the screen here, Aaron Partlow, is a youth minister in Longview, Texas, where the view is long. And I feel like there should be another half of that. Now, storms came through last night for you guys, huh?
Yeah, I am. I'm pretty
Noisy
tired.
night?
We had a busy night. So had some touchdowns, had some collateral damage. Luckily, I don't think I have not fully checked, but it didn't seem like it was as bad as it could be. But Lauren and I both said it this morning. We went, man, we feel bad for the weathermen who were the meteorologists who were on TV because they just looked overwhelmed. There was just so many spots, so many rotations, so many touchdowns all over the place and everywhere because the storm was huge that was blowing through. There was some down in Houston, and then there were some in Tyler, and then they were like, oh, in Gladewater, in our county, and I was just like, at one point you were just like, listen, I just need you to talk about my area real quick. But there were so many areas that it was just going crazy. In Gilmer, there was a good touchdown or a bad touchdown in Gilmer, which is really not too far away from us. So we're messaging all of our teens this morning and making sure they're okay and seeing if there's anything they need, if they have power or anything like that. But fair enough to say that I'm a little tired this morning because it was a little bit of a stressful night. Sam slept right through it. We moved our futon to the hallway. That's probably the safest place in our house, and had the cat and the dog and everybody, and our cat hated being confined, and so she's scratching on all the doors trying to be like, hey, just like, it's fine. But it was a long night for us. Yeah, long night for us.
So you didn't live long enough in Kansas for that to just be tornado.
Well,
whatever.
In Kansas, I never had any like actual like touchdowns. Like there were like actual rotation and sightings and touchdowns like a mile away from my house.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I guess that's true.
So
we didn't.
There's a little bit of a difference from like. I don't think we ever got really to tornado watch. In Topeka, while I lived there, there was plenty of tornado warnings. Where you have all the ingredients to make a tornado, but they're not making themselves. So last night was like we were like legitimately on, like, hey, look, there's a tornado, and you should probably be in your place. Yeah, but the thunder and lightning was loud last night.
Someone asked here, because of hurricanes that are coming through, and someone asked whether you would rather go through a hurricane or a tornado, and I was like, dude, give me a tornado any day. Tornadoes pop up, they hit, and they're gone.
Yeah,
like hurricanes, you have 2 weeks to think about them as they're coming in, and then when they hit, they have a 40 or 50 mile wide swath of destruction, and they take so long to come, and then they sit down over you, and then they move off. And
yeah, tornadoes are kind of like the gambler's game, right? You just kind of you don't know whether or not it's gonna touch down and affect you, but a hurricane is like it will affect you.
It will, yeah, in one way or another.
And you can prep more for a hurricane, but it's going to do a lot more. And a tornado, you can't really prep for a whole bunch, and it may not do anything, or it may destroy your entire house.
And it's so like it's random too. It's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, man, we're going to be talking a little bit more about criticism. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about how do you handle criticism when it's given. As we were talking, I think we realized that maybe we need to go through and talk about how do you give criticism.
Yeah,
that's true. Whether you're a minister or a layperson that's been asked to maybe give some input or some feedback on some things. And it's also true just in families, right? I mean, I find myself offering criticism to my kids, my wife, my friends, and we always want our criticism to be constructive. We don't want it to be destructive. We want that criticism to build up and encourage. That's not really our default, right? Our default is to be a little bit cutting with our words, whether we intend to or not. So I think constructive criticism takes a little more thought and a little more planning. So we're going to talk about that today. I hope you're good with that.
Yeah. No, I'm good with that. Looked over the notes. We're all set and ready. I think that's really good. I think that's you're absolutely right.
You want to kick us off? I found a list online that had some really good kind of thoughts that I picked and choose from, and of course, they didn't say anything about prayer. So,
of course not.
I went ahead and added that on the list. And
I really think if you're entering into any situation as a Christian and as a ministry leader or anything whatsoever, and you're not bathing scenarios in prayer, you're doing something wrong. Yeah. It reminds me of like a cooking show, and it seems like chefs always have like their staple, like this is how you do this. This is always how you do it. It's kind of like, if you talk to any chef and they're like, well, how do you make pasta? Well, first you put salt in the water and while it's rising to a boil. And if you don't do that, then it's going to be goofy. That's like a staple, or if you're going to make your good pasta sauce and you're not putting a cup of that boiled pasta water in your sauce isn't going to be as good as a professional chef's kind of an idea. And so for me, like it's so obvious, if somebody has asked you to do anything, we should always be bathing stuff in prayer.
I think I may have just learned the missing ingredient in my pasta sauce, though.
In your pasta sauce? You never heard that? Or you just don't do it?
I hadn't really thought about how to make pasta sauce. I mean, it seems to be pretty simple, but that may be the missing ingredient.
So. It'll elevate even like, your Hunt sauce if you crack it open and you put it in there. You just put like a half a cup or a cup, depending on how much sauce you're making. After your pasta's boiled and it's starting to cool, you take that and you put it in there.
See, folks, here on Behind the Beards, we educate you about many more things than just simply what goes on in ministry. We're giving you cooking tips. We're giving you life tips. Come to us for all of your needs. We're here.
That's right. But yeah, bathing any situation in prayer. But I also feel like this is one of those steps that's easiest for us to forget as well. Sometimes we just forget that first step. I connect more with Moses in the wilderness, and the second time that he smacks that rock, and he gets in trouble for it because must we provide or must I provide or what he says there, but basically takes credit for providing this water for the Israelites. And I think there's such a valuable lesson for us in leadership and leadership positions or just in our Christian life, where it's easy for us to forget that first fundamental step, which is like stopping and bathing a situation in prayer, and asking for God's guidance, asking for his words, asking for him to show you some of the places where maybe there needs to be, a critique or an uplift or something like that.
Yeah, there is an assumption, I think, that we make, especially when we're talking to people, that if we're talking to like faith people, if we're talking to Christian people, there is an assumption that we've prayed there, and that prayer is just going to be a part of it. And I don't think we should assume that,
right?
Because assuming it kind of passes it over, and the more often and the more frequently you pass over it, the easier it is for it to just be forgotten.
Yeah.
And I like that image of bathing something in prayer. That it is a part of the preparation, but it doesn't stop at the preparation.
No,
it carries all the way through, and then we're going to finish it off in prayer as well, with that complete submersion, praying over the situation and over the people as well.
Absolutely, and this can go from like working on a planning committee for an event, but it also works for a one-on-one meeting that you're going to have with somebody as well.
Yeah,
I mean it's like this is like Christian leadership 101 for you.
Right. prayer.
And this happens outside of like the community, the communal aspect, and it happens definitely within your individual life as well. I mean, there's a reason why Paul states, hey, pray without ceasing, because everything that we should be doing we should be praying for,
Right.
And stuff like that. So
It's a way of life.
but it's one of those easy kind of like beginner things that it's easy for us to forget to do.
Well, and if you go through and someone says, well, what should I do? And you start giving a list of things to do. And then someone else comes in and says, well, you should probably start with prayer. Your instinctive response is, oh, well, yeah, I mean, of course. I just assumed that you were praying. It's like, well, don't assume. Make it a part of the process, an intentional, purposeful part of the process.
Right.
You also have to examine, I have to examine my own heart, and I have to examine the relationship. Like if I'm getting ready to criticize something someone is doing or something about a project, even if it is solicited, I have to make sure I have the right relationship with this person that I'm about to talk to that is going to be able to withstand what it is that I have to say.
Right.
And then I have to determine, is the relationship more important than the information I have to offer? And in my own heart, sometimes I come from a bad place. I come from a place of an unhealthy stance or other things that have gone on in my life where if I'm hurt, it is really hard for me to give criticism in a way that's healthy and uplifting because I respond out of a hurt position.
Yeah.
And I'm ready kind of just to inflict some damage.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to be as well. So I have to inspect myself and the relationship to make sure that both of those parties are able to withstand the words that need to be said, or do they need to come from someone else? Because sometimes they just simply need to come from another source besides me.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's really good. That examining the relationship and examining my own heart, like that is such a huge part of criticism as well. And I think anytime that you can take a step back, and I think this helps when we start with prayer, like going back to this, but when you start with prayer, I think there's a really strong moment where when you start that way, you're able to kind of step back and really examine some of these other aspects. The relationship. Do I have enough chips to be able to say this with being effective and not hurting somebody? Do I have? Am I saying this because that's my preference, or because it's good for everybody? That's a hard part about criticism, is trying to decide, what is good for me, but what is good for the group as a whole.
Right.
Because if church is all about like how good it is for me, well, then we run into a big problem because everybody wants their own way, and we have fights and arguments. And so, but if it's about what's good for the group as a whole, and the problem with that is sometimes we can say, well, it's really good for the whole, but if we've skipped prayer and allowing the Holy Spirit to guide us, then we can say, well, it's good for the whole, but really it's just good for us, and we're isolating a group or a people or whatever, and so there's a giant train.
Yeah. Well, I'm really good at
living
reframing
next to the tracks.
I know. I'm really good at reframing what I want.
Yeah.
In the image of being good for the whole group. And so I have to really be cognizant of when I'm doing that.
Yeah, it can get kind of confusing. I think that's where bathing things in prayer and talking about and really praying with God to kind of do that. So,
well, there's some things here that we're going to talk about, like keys. Once we've done the things that we've talked about that I think are most important, that, just for the record, if you're going to look at, keys online for giving criticism, I didn't find any list that included pray for the situation, examine the relationship, examine your heart, because that's just not typically. It's either assumed or
that's really a Christian response, not necessarily the worldly response.
And now we're going to look at some things that I think are really helpful. Like some of these I wrote down because I want to, maybe we have some different ideas about them. But I statements. Do you use I statements or you statements in criticism? This is kind of where I'll tell you my default. My default is to go to, well, you should do this and you should do this. And I think it comes to in preaching, in your hermeneutics classes, everything said, I understand the humility in including me and we and I in your preaching. I said, but if you want to be effective preaching, you have to make it personal.
Yeah.
And so you have to say, you do this. And when you do this, all of a sudden it has a different way of piercing the heart of the hearer.
It does.
And so I have gotten in the habit of using you statements in places where I would normally use I or we statements because of the way it makes that message so personal to my hearers. And getting in that habit is probably not the best way of going about offering criticism.
No, it's not. When you use those kind of statements, it's like really daggering and pointing towards somebody else. However,
accusatory almost, right?
Yeah, like I don't know. Like I feel like sometimes there's a good balance. If you're using a lot of you statements, that can get pretty personal and pretty rough. And that probably is not the best way. Like I guess I think of like doing LTC drama, right? I use a lot of we statements when criticizing and being like, okay, so Aaron, what'd you think of our skit? Well, I think you had this, but in some cases, there were some statements where I was like, hey, as the individual, you're terrible. Like you need to learn your lines. Like you have
obviously not practiced, right?
You have missed your mark multiple times, and so, I think there's a good balance of all, and it also depends. Like I don't know, it also depends on what kind of criticism is being asked. Like, are you criticizing like a curriculum, or are you asked to examine a curriculum? Are you asked to examine a ministry as a whole? Or are you asked to, somebody's, are you examining, a deacon or another minister and their position and what they're doing?
Well, I think this is where it comes in useful is if I come in and say, hey, well, you messed up this and you had this typo and you didn't do this very well. Even if I don't mean that to be personal, it can be taken very personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I want is I want for the hearer to be open to hearing those, to receiving those things.
Yeah.
And so if I approach it as, hey, this is what I saw and this is what I think, and this would be the way I would handle this situation or what I would do. Mm-hmm. Now then it opens that person up to say, okay, well, now they're just offering an opinion. Mm-hmm. And now I get to take that information and decide, is this the way or the route that I want to go?
Right.
And so it really puts all that responsibility on them. And I think that has the opportunity to take away that defensive stance and that posture that comes. So,
I also like if I'm asked to, criticize or talk about something, there's a conversation that always kind of happens. So I think I'm more interested in the conversation than I am about the I am about the giving the criticism in a sense. So, I might go, I'd say one thing is be prepared, but then don't be over prepared. Because if you're over prepared, then are you really willing to listen? Because I'm chaotic, I'm crazy. And so there's a method behind some of the things that I do. Most of the things that I do, there's a method there. And sometimes you just need to be let in on, the idea or the process behind that. And then you're like, oh, no, I get it. And so, if you're those kind of statements, you come in, I guess I ask more questions. Like, hey, tell me about this. What do you think about this? Oh, okay. Okay, I kind of see where you're going. I just want you to know that it doesn't come off that way. This is the way that it's perceived. So if that's what you want, maybe you need to rethink about, how you're going to get to point A to point B.
And how we can clarify that, right?
How can we clarify that? And
because that give and
take, I feel like
right?
That's more constructive. Mm-hmm. That's more you care about the scenario, not, hey, you're doing this and it's not working out, so you need to do something different. Okay, well, you haven't heard me out at all. You don't know, like, if I'm sitting there and I'm going, man, I hope they take this off my plate. Or B, man, I have put my heart and soul into this. You don't know whether I fall left or right of it.
Right.
But then at the same time, if you over-prepare, then you're like, hey, talk to me about this. And then they start talking to you and you do this. like it doesn't matter what you're going to say because I'm going to say whatever I'm going to say next.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's not listening. And you're not adding to. You're just being bad. I don't know. I don't know how to like come across and say that because like I've been in those scenarios where somebody's already had their answer before I could even like explain or talk about something.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of the day, I'm just like, man, it doesn't matter what I say. Like you were going to hit me in the head with that shovel.
Right. Well, it is so important to have the give and take, to have the conversation because
Yes.
Sometimes, if I offer an alternative and then someone comes back and says, well, this is kind of what I was going after. I was like, oh, I see that now.
Yeah.
And now then that I understand that, now then here's kind of what I would adjust, and here's the way this came across to me. And I kind of like that point there, because if you do come and you already have in mind what you're going to say, then you're not going to be open to hearing the back and forth. And that's just how we get better.
That is how we get better.
I think it's so important to bring, if I'm going to offer criticism to something you've done, I need to offer some alternative. I think it's all called actionable feedback.
That drives me nuts when people don't do that.
Like, here you go.
Here's the problem. I have no solution.
Yeah.
Or at least they don't even acknowledge the fact that they don't have a solution.
That's right.
Because there's two ways that I could take that. But go ahead.
No, I think you're right. It's like if you don't have a route to go, I mean, it's okay to bring up an issue or some kind of an obstacle that has arisen. And if you don't know how to overcome that, then just acknowledge that and say, look, I'm here with you, and I don't really know how to overcome this, but here is what I am noticing and seeing, and here is my recommendation.
Right.
But if at all possible, man, offer a different route, offer a different pattern.
Guys, this also goes, I guess, like for me, like this goes for like church dynamics, but this also goes for like family dynamics too.
Business dynamics. If you're in the office, if you're in an office project, absolutely.
And like this is so applicable to all of these kind of fields. This is not just like, hey, within a church, like this is just positive ways to be able to, help change and other things kind of happen.
Hey, Aaron, what do you want to eat tonight?
That's right. I don't know. Anything sounds good. You list it off.
All right, let's go get tacos.
I don't want that. That doesn't sound good.
Okay, well, let's go get Chinese.
Ugh, no, Chinese, that's gross. I don't want that.
All right, well, what do you want?
Well, I'm okay with anything. You just pick something. I'm really good with anything. I'm not picky.
So just
by the way, if you ask me that question, that is never the answer that you will receive. Well, actually, you might receive like the answer of, "Oh, anything's fine. I'm not picky," and then you'll pick something and go, "Great, let's go," because I'm really not picky. And if I am picky, I'll say, the only thing I don't want is this.
Right. And I think if you come in here and say, you know what, I just had tacos for lunch. How about we go get burgers? But just offer something. And as you go back and forth, you're so much more likely to land in a place where you're both in a good place.
Absolutely.
So, provide actionable feedback. And if you don't have it, just acknowledge that you don't have it. I think this mentioned by Ron here is good. I think the hardest thing is to have my Christianity criticized by non-Christians, for them not to know all sin and struggle. And I think what makes that difficult is you're not starting from the same platform. And I think that's where we go back to the very beginning, right here. We said, you're going to pray over the situation. You're going to pray over the relationship, and I'm going to examine my own heart. Because when we begin that process, we want to begin from the same platform. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I think that statement right there also clarifies, like, if you're not bathing the situation in prayer, I'm going to put the shoe on the other foot, because I think what Ron said is actually pretty more profound than kind of what we think there, right? Because if you are, say, like, it's your job to do a review of like maybe a deacon in a ministry that's kind of going on, and you're not a part of that ministry, you've never seen how it works, and you just go in with ideas and hack and slash, you're almost exactly what Ron just described there. Like somebody who's on the outside who doesn't know is criticizing something that doesn't know how it works.
Right.
Like I will have a hard time ever really criticizing like a benevolence ministry, because I don't know fully what would go on in that benevolence ministry and how hard it is to cipher out, who is, truly needing help, who are scam artists, who are just going down the phone book to call multiple people in the church to kind of get money and all that kind of stuff. And so, you have to work in that field and really know what that ground can bring forth as far as growth and stuff like that in order to really criticize. And so, yeah, I agree, Ron. Like, that is difficult. That is hard. And that can be difficult. And I feel like in that scenario, you have to bathe it in prayer, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe that's an opportunity there for you to be able to grow and to share and to say, well, I appreciate your opinion, but this is how my faith works. And I don't know.
And it also goes back to knowing the relationship, because criticism by nature is negative.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Criticism by nature is something that picks and pulls and tears apart something someone has worked at, or it picks and it tears apart at their very core, their very being, their very character.
Well, and negativity is kind of like a not cool topic right now in our culture as well.
Right.
Like, how many times do you see the, like, oh man, vibe check, good vibes,
good vibes only. Good vibes
don't
only.
don't bring any negativity into here. And I think that's a knee-jerk reaction to maybe over-criticism and improper ways of giving criticism. Because I've been there where I'm like, oh man, like, I've been over-criticized, I'm beaten raw, I'm already bleeding, and yet here comes somebody with a grader, to grade me even more.
So including positive comments to balance the negative nature, but there is a line that you have to be careful not to cross, because how often do you know when someone has forced positive comments in your direction?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just looking and searching for something positive to tell you. Someone to say, hey, well, but hey, on the plus side, your beard looks really good today, man. I'm like, yeah, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And now I feel manipulated, right?
Absolutely. Well, that also gives you an idea. Like, if you're a church member, or if you're a member of a church, or you're a member of a community, or whatever it is, and the only time that you ever talk to somebody is to give negative criticism, that's going to be, this mantra that kind of hangs over you. I guess I think of it this way. Like, if your elders only meet with your ministers to give negative feedback, then your ministers are never going to enjoy when you send an email and said, hey, would you come to the elders meeting? Because they know, oh, well, I'm going to get dogged on, or something is going to be criticized and I'm going to have to fix it. And so there's like this brilliance of beautiful communication. And speaking our mind, we have a tendency to not say the good things over the bad things. I'm only going to speak up when something's bad. I'm not going to really speak up when something's good. It's almost like we, this is so bad. This is so terrible. But sometimes I feel like I wish I had one of those ring the bell for good service or whatever, just so I could hear that bell sometimes. Just so that I know that what I'm doing works out.
The Long John Silver bell.
Yeah, and I guess like maybe working with teens, that's just kind of how it is. Like, a lot of times, like, teens will tell you when something's bad, and they won't really tell you where they're good. I don't feel that way at this moment. Like, actually, the teens I'm working with at Pine Tree, it's nice. I like to know if it's not a good subject or a good class, because then it helps me teach a better class. Or, hey, Aaron, like, I appreciate the lesson tonight, but man, the style of this class was really rough for me to like follow along. Okay, good. I won't go with that style again,
Right.
But yeah, sometimes like we only get the negative criticism, that we don't get some positive reinforcement.
I think in that preparation, you have to ask yourself, what was my last conversation with this person like?
Absolutely. That's good.
And if the last time I came to them was a point of criticalness, and you go, what about the time before that? And if I can't remember a positive interaction I had with this person, then maybe I need to do some building here. I
Right.
remember a few years ago we had a member of our church. He had kind of been here before, had been back a couple times, and then they're just kind of in this point of transition. And he's like, "Hey, man, let's go to lunch." And so I went to lunch, and I'm sitting here and I'm just waiting, like waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, why did you bring me out to lunch? And then we
Right.
got
Yeah.
done with lunch, and he was like, "Man, well, that's it." And I was like, "Oh." It's like, you didn't have anything to talk about? He goes, "No, man, I just wanted to,
Before
have
you
lunch."
go,
And yeah, and I was like, I didn't realize like how much I really needed that. And there's been a few people that regularly will do
people
that. Just
do
say, "Hey,
that.
let's go eat," and they just want to see how the family's doing, and they want to ask about Dustin, and they want to ask about the grandbaby, and they just want to know what's going on
Oh,
in
do
our
you have a
lives.
grandchild?
And I do. I don't know if you
Oh,
knew that or
weird.
not, but
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
and so it's like, oh man, those interactions are so needed. And there are those people in my life who I only criticize. And I'm going to tell you who
Mm,
that can most easily be: my children and my wife.
right. Yeah.
They are the ones that can most easily become the people who are a constant object of my criticism.
Hmm.
And we have this mentality that says, I shouldn't reward you for doing what you're supposed to do. And
Yeah.
maybe
Who
maybe
said
that's
that?
true.
That's a very negative, terrible
Yeah.
person who said that.
And maybe it doesn't need to be rewarded, but it does need to be acknowledged at least.
Yeah.
And if you aren't going to reward the things that you desire your children and your relationships to be, like, you're going to continue to perpetuate the things that are rewarded.
The only time I say thank you is in the month of November when the youth minister does a series on being thankful.
That's right.
And that includes talking and being thankful to other people around you.
Well, I think of Dwight Schrute in The Office, right? I mean, the guy brings the pizza and he's like, "There's no tip," and he goes, "Why would I tip you for doing something that I can do
That's right.
myself? I only tip people who do
That's
things
right.
that I can't do myself," which means I tip my proctologist really well because I
That's right.
can't. like, oh man, that is so ridiculous. And then I think we kind of live that way though sometimes.
That's
Why
right.
would I
Yeah.
reward that when it's expected?
Hmm.
But acknowledging when our kids do something good, acknowledging when our wife or our husbands, wherever you're at in your life, there, your spouse, acknowledging that they're doing something that's encouraging and uplifting and is positive, is the way to build that base by which we can constructively move forward.
Right.
What about the compliment sandwich? Right, we're talking about positive. Do you use the compliment sandwich?
No.
Thank you. I was like, I wrote that down, and then I was like, Aaron might actually think that's a really good thing. It's like, I hope not, and I think not, but
No.
I can't stand the compliment sandwich.
Neither can
What do you
I.
not like? What do you not like about the compliment sandwich?
The compliments are never worthy of the negative that's in the middle. They're never well thought out. They're never. That's like, Josh, you have a great beard. Your preaching sucks, but hey, you can rock
I
a
like your
bald
shirt.
head really well. It's like those don't have anything to do in common. By the way, Josh, you are an excellent preacher, and I enjoy your sermons. But yeah, like, I don't know, like, they don't ever come off sincere. And I think if you practice some of these methods that we talked about before, you don't have to do gimmicks. I feel like the compliment sandwich is a gimmick. And I feel like if you practice these other things, I think if you come in and you say, "Hey, tell me your thought process through this." Okay. And then you listen and you understand, and then you reevaluate like your criticism or how you're going to say it. Man, I feel like that comes off, for me, that comes off, you're trying to invest, you're trying to learn more than just like a petty little compliment. I've been in scenarios, I've been on the receiving end of compliment sandwiches, and the compliments don't help. You know,
No.
you can only, like, I feel like if you have a pile of dog poo, you can only spray it with so much Febreze, but it's still dog poo.
That's right.
Right?
And I would much prefer a pro and a con, or a good and a bad column.
I
And
don't
there's
even like
other.
those.
I don't like them either, but
That's a personal preference though, for me.
it is. However, if I'm having to choose between someone giving me some fake compliment just to make the criticism more palatable, supposedly, I'd rather them look and say, "Here's the things that I enjoyed, and here's the things that or here's the things I thought were well, and here's the things that I really didn't think were done well."
Cool. That's
I
good.
prefer that.
I am glad that you prefer that.
If
I,
I'm
on the
honest
other
with you,
hand,
I don't prefer criticism at all. I would really just assume
Yeah.
you leave me alone and
Just
let
leave
me
me
do my
alone.
thing my way. But if you're going to give it to me, I just want just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts.
I never like it when the criticisms. I guess I don't like unbalancedness, and so I feel like sometimes, I feel like a lot of times, but in some cases this is true, and I'll know this is true. But in some cases, I feel like people are over critical, and not over appreciative. Does that make sense? Like they're really quick to, and so when I look at a pros and con list, it'll be like pros, the punch was good. Con, Aaron, you suck at youth ministry. Pro, the ice was the correct temperature. Con, Aaron, you're ugly. Like it's like, again, those don't correlate for me. And if I look at a pros and cons list, and I think a lot of it comes towards, like, I'm not good at making pros and cons lists. Like, I'm not good at finding equivalent pros to the cons. So I think that's completely a personal thing for me.
Yeah. No, I hear that. But if it is, hey, class number one, I thought it was really good. I really connected with the topic. I thought the scripture flowed really well with it.
It was good.
Class number two,
I struggled.
and we
I
kind of missed something there. I don't know what was different, but somehow you didn't make the same connection, and what you used, I just didn't flow the same. And so that is a way in which, and again, it goes back to, am I going to be genuine with everything? If I'm going to be genuine in my negativity, I need to be genuine in my positivity, and don't try to bring something just because it says you should. But I'm bringing this to you because I genuinely believe that this was something that needs to be praised and needs to be acknowledged.
I agree.
Because
That's
I think
good.
people know when they're being manipulated.
They do.
People know when they're just being offered something that is token. And if you're going to offer something token, don't offer it at all.
That's right.
It's better for it to be just straight criticism than to be bracketed by token positive comments just to make you feel like you've checked a box in the how to offer criticism list. Do it all in the spirit of love, Stephen. It's good. Because it all goes back to that relationship of, I'm doing this so that we can move forward. I want you to be better. You've obviously thought something about this relationship to open yourself up in this way, if it's requested.
I think before we go, I think the last one on this list that I actually think is well, there's two. I always say pay attention to tone and posture. I feel like if you're in church leadership and at all, and you have not read a book or done something about tone and posture and body mechanics and body language, you are missing out on a whole form of communication that people do without even realizing it. And it'll save you if you're in a meeting, because you might be in a meeting at some point where you can look around the room and you can see tone and posture, and you can realize nobody in that room wants to be there right there. And that is a good time for you to be able to say, hey, let's pray and let's go home and go to bed. Like, let's just be done. Like, we don't have to talk about this. We don't have to continue to force this conversation. The world's not going to burn down tomorrow and that kind of stuff. Or if you're meeting with somebody and, I mean, they are super defensive, and you can read that in their tone and in their posture, then you know that you need to step back and do a different approach. And maybe this one meeting needs to be 2 or 3 meetings, because maybe you need to do exactly what Josh just said, and you need to just have a meeting where you have lunch and everything like them. Now, see, when I say that, I also go, well, boy, that kind of seems like it's agenda pushing. But it's not. It's not. It's you actually taking a step back in truly caring about that person, because like Jesus
Recognizing
says,
that there needs to be some building that goes on before we can have this tough conversation.
that's right.
Yeah.
And then the other one I wanted to mention real quick was that timely feedback. Don't criticize something that happened 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
Right? Don't set that meeting for something that happened last summer, and it's almost the new summer. If you want to be involved and you want to do the pros and cons and you want to talk about something, then it needs to happen within a timely manner.
So when I am
Because things get foggy.
going, yeah, right, for sure. And it's kind of like training a dog, right? If you don't catch a dog in the act, you can punish that dog all you want. It has no idea what you're punishing it for.
That's right.
And so that immediate, feedback, and that's true with children as well. As they get older, they understand the correlation over time more. But young toddlers, they need immediate feedback. And if something bad happened an hour ago, and then you find that they colored on the wall an hour ago, and we're now an hour later, you can take them back to that place. You can have a conversation, but you need the immediate feedback, and we need that as well. But also in posture, when I deal with people who are often in conflict, our tendency is to speak to one another face to face.
That's right. Yeah.
Like we want to sit, if we're sitting down, we want to sit knee to knee, and we want to look at one another, and we want to have this conversation. But that is so antagonistic. And so I will seat them. Yeah, I will seat them in chairs that are beside each other and almost kind of diagonally facing one another, so that it paints this picture that is just simply, yes, we disagree, but we are moving in the same direction.
That's right.
And when we can have a conversation shoulder to shoulder instead of face to face, we recognize that we're really not fighting against one another. We're fighting against an obstacle. And so when we can come together, even in criticism, and I can put myself in a body posture that says, look, I'm here and I'm with you and I am on your side. Now together, let's tackle this obstacle that lies in front of us. Now then, I don't have this sense of you're attacking my person. Instead, we are together attacking this obstacle. And I just think we undervalue posture. I think we undervalue prayer,
totally, 100%.
Conversation, and definitely when it comes to having those tough conversations. So,
yeah, absolutely,
it's good, man.
There's a lot of good questions popping up in our chat and all sorts of stuff for us to kind of cover it and look at. So I appreciate y'all being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could address this in a whole nother podcast, but are you afraid if you criticize someone, they might leave your church or your youth group? Yeah.
Come back next week. Come back next week, and we will talk about that. Yeah, I think that's a great episode for next week, to be honest.
You have a Behind the Beards moment? Or is this whole episode a Behind the Beards moment? Have we just shaved in front of the whole world?
I think... Yeah, no, I think my Behind the Beards moment would be something that goes along this lines. I feel like empty criticism and empty compliments can do a lot more damage and can hurt somebody more on a level. If we are trying to be an organism that works together, that loves together, that's there for our ups and for our downs, then you're going to want to put in the effort and put more skin in the game when it comes to your criticism and your compliments. Hollow criticism and things like that towards your preacher or towards your elders or towards your deacons can be extremely hurtful and also show some of your true colors. So be careful about that because, how committed to this relationship with Jesus are you? You can tell by people's comments and some of the things they say. Because I'll be honest, like if we're doing like a super just fun event that has nothing to do with Jesus, is just about fellowship, and you come in super hard and angry about some criticisms, man, I care, but at the same time I'm like, this isn't a salvation issue. So if you feel that badly about it, then you need to be on the committee. If Santa didn't have the right chair that he was sitting in for your Santa pictures, well then sounds like next year you need to be in charge of helping set that up. Because that has nothing to do with Jesus and salvation and things like that. And so I think sometimes there's criticisms that we need to hold back because it's just a personal preference. And if you're not willing to put in the extra time and effort to be a part of the solution, then you need to put in the extra effort to not say your criticism. That sounds kind of rough. It sounds like being mean. Sometimes I feel like I'm mean in my behind the beards moment.
Well, I mean, it's real. I mean, it's genuine. I was gonna say it probably goes back to the beginning, and I kind of like
be nicer
Steve
than
said.
you, Josh.
He said pasta water. Like pasta water is gonna be my behind the beards moment. And go back to the core. Like before you offer criticism to someone, examine yourself, examine the person, examine the situation, and dadgummit, pray about it.
That's right.
And don't stop praying about it. And when it's over,
don't stop praying.
Yeah, you can lay this song for next week, okay? And then when it's over and it's been resolved, go ahead and keep on praying for it.
Yeah.
And don't assume anything.
Don't assume. Stop assuming.
Don't assume.
When you assume, you know the
Bad
rest of the saying. That's right. We want to thank you all for being here today. We appreciate it. We want to remind you of Galatians 6:9. Don't grow weary in doing good. This world is messy. This life is messy. Relationships with other people, relationships with the church, because we're human and we're people, it's messy and it's hard. But don't grow weary in doing good. Jesus did something amazing for us all. And we show our grace and his mercy and his truth through the way that we interact with other people. So don't grow weary in doing good. I'm Aaron, and this is Josh, and we will see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard. Till we're all.
What was that? Oh man.
Oh, that's
Funny.
good stuff, man. You have any critiques? You have any criticism to offer on the podcast?
I got a lot of noise going on here. I don't know where your Kindle is, Bub. It's on the couch. It's good. It's good.
Oh, it's good. Looking forward to next week. We'll have to fold in some of that. Are you willing to say the things that need to be said if it's really going to create some friction with people?
I don't know if I can be honest on that, so we'll see. Can I just be fake and say what I should say, or is there some truth there?
Yeah, good question in the chat for those that are still here, man. Appreciate you guys always. Like, share, comment.
Chat was on fire.
No, we'll see you guys next week.
See y'all next week.